You're watching Wisconsin Eye, an independent, nonprofit public affairs network, engaging the citizens of Wisconsin since 2007 through access to government proceedings and public policy events.
Let us now transition to transition management, organizing, sequencing, and managing change. And we have two individuals who have managed big change. Heather Shimmers is Chief Operating Officer with Gunderson Health System, and Rusty Cunningham is the retired publisher and editor of the La Crosse Tribune, and I guess I would add, Rusty, the voice of La Crosse for decades, and an incredible one at that. Heather, Rusty, welcome. So, as society has changed dramatically in the past, I guess, couple decades, healthcare and information have been two of the industries that have changed dramatically. If we're going to engage in some kind of a change in how we deliver early childhood education and care and how we fund it, what lessons can we learn from the changes that, Heather, you've encountered in healthcare, and Rusty, you've encountered in providing information to the public, and because you've overseen some very big changes. Give us your experiences and tell us what we can learn from it. Heather.
First of all, thank you for having me. And it was interesting when I was first asked to join this panel, I kept thinking, I wonder why they want a healthcare executive to come and talk about early childhood and daycare. And boy, just sitting here in the time that I've been sitting here today, I can draw all sorts of correlations to the pain that you're having. I share that with you. Boy, we have certainly experienced some change in my profession. I will tell you first a little bit about myself. So I am brand new to the La Crosse area. I have just lived here for 6 months. I came from the other side of the state in the Fox Valley region. So being here has just been an absolute joy and pleasure, and getting to meet all sorts of wonderful people. But listening to some of the things that I've heard today, it made me really just sit there and stop and think about why was I able to make the move I was able to make? And it's because I'm at the age, my children, I have 4 beautiful young adult children. I didn't have to think about that. I didn't have to think about everything we're talking about today. And I stopped for a moment and thought, I wonder if I could have done that a few years ago. Could I have done that? And I bet my answer would have been no. And my answer was no, because I think about just personally and professionally for myself, in order for me to climb the corporate ladder as a female executive, my husband had to quit his job to stay home with our kids. So my heart goes out to all of you. Thank you for everything you do every day, and I understand why this is so important today. I'll tell you some of the changes. The pandemic taught us so many things in healthcare, and when I stop and think about 2 years ago, what I was doing, and 2 years ago today, and the issues that I'm trying to solve for, there is no comparison. There just is no comparison. My world has completely changed. I often ask myself, what did I do exactly 2 years ago? I'm not sure what I actually spent my time doing. The thing I will say, and that I hope to be able to share some stories and some success stories with you, just in my short time here, we have focused on the issues at hand around clearly workforce, right? You all are facing workforce, and as I was listening to Jim talk, and thank you for using a nursing example, that was beautiful. So I am the Chief Operating Officer as well as the Chief Nursing Officer. So many of my examples today, I'm going to talk about the nursing workforce, but please know that I am no fool in thinking that there is way more professions that make up a healthcare workforce than just nursing. But nurses do tend to fill about 50% of all of the healthcare physicians. Our nursing workforce, when you think about what has happened, we've had this thing called the silver tsunami in healthcare, where anybody that was over the age of 55 that we were planning for retirement, but not for some time, they've chosen to retire early and have completely left the workforce. So before 2020, when you think about the facts and the data, we had a very nice even split in the nursing profession of younger nurses joining the workforce and what I like to call our wisdom nurses. Those are those nurses that have been committed to the profession, that are just strong and are bringing up this younger workforce. That is completely flipped. Completely flipped. So we now have our largest RN population between the ages of 25 and 40. Now think about what we're talking about today. I have to recruit those people. I have to get them to this community. I have 190 acute care RN openings right now in La Crosse. 190. It's a lot. We're taking care of 250 to 300 patients a day in our acute care setting. Census isn't going down, the need is rising. The good news is our education system is educating young nurses, and it's fantastic. I can't wait. This is the pandemic, everything we thought that it might do to the nursing profession for having interest in joining, it hasn't done that. People are still wanting to become nurses. Now the problem is I have to recruit them here, and I have to get them to La Crosse. One of the most beautiful things that I've realized here is once people come, they do not leave. They do not leave. As I go around and talk to this workforce, many of them have started in positions such as our daycare center or started in environmental services. And the great thing about working in healthcare is that you can have a career succession plan for people that can lead them from, that $15 an hour that we just raised our minimum wage all the way up to a very, high earning income by supporting them through that. And that's what we're focusing on right now. Bringing in new programming, partnering with our local colleges and schools and high schools to make sure that we are letting people know you can come, you can start here, but we're going to help you get to where you want to get in your career. Because we also have seen people won't stay in a position longer than 5 years anymore. They just won't. So we've got to be able to have that succession planning for them. So I have a ton of examples of things that we've done, but I don't want to hog all the time, so I'll pass it over to you.
No, that's really helpful, and welcome to the community.
And Rusty, before you get going, I just
Sure.
For full disclosure, in terms of big change, if we ever change from a democracy to benevolent dictator, you're my choice. Okay, that's number one. So with that, go ahead. It used to be the case in the newsrooms. It was so busy you couldn't have a conversation. Now, you could hear a pin drop. You've gone through some major change in the news business.
We have indeed, and Mark, you can appreciate this. For me, dealing with change is a lot like dealing with hair loss. I can mourn the loss of the curls low these many years ago, or I can embrace the low maintenance of what I have today. Managing change is one thing, leading it quite another. My industry indeed has gone through tremendous change, painful change, at times exciting change. To me, it's especially consuming because I'm the fourth consecutive generation of my family to be a journalist, or as I like to say, I come from a family of slow learners. Work isn't just what I do, it's who I am. As you lead change, remember how people identify with work. I learned that while covering plant closings in the ag industry in the Quad Cities 40 years ago. I also learned that watching the sorrow on faces of my coworkers after they learned that a colleague had lost a job because of cost cuts. One coworker used to constantly criticize the person in the next cubicle until she was let go. So I asked him, and I reminded him of the criticisms, and he said, "But you don't understand. She's been my work spouse for the last 13 years. Work spouse, what an interesting concept. And it reminds us to listen and to not assume. You can't just practice empathy, you have to show it. Management by walking around is crucial. Remember, especially during the toughest times, your most important ability is your availability. Put down the damn phone, put down the damn mouse, and go talk to your coworkers, and more importantly, go listen. As I joke about my low-maintenance hairstyle, remember to take your work seriously, but not yourself. The best thing about journalism is there's always another deadline, another web update, another edition. It's your job to fill all of those spaces with locally relevant stories and photos that are important to your readers. After the session of 2008, the La Crosse Tribune, Winona Daily News, and our sister publications from River Valley Media earned the 2011 Enterprise of the Year Award from Lee Enterprises for our achievements and our resilience. So we knew we could get this done. We could fight adversity and we could succeed. But the changes kept coming. There were buildings to set up, to sell off, and more cuts to make. But there was no change in the mission of informing our readers and meeting their expectations. For me, it is important to communicate, empathize, praise, and celebrate. Find ways of blending your passion for what you do with the compassion of serving others. When we outsourced printing, you could no longer feel the rumble or hear the roar of the press. But that doesn't mean your work loses importance. Stick to core mission and values. Stick to who you are as a person and as a professional. Remember that as a leader, you provide lessons daily, good or bad. As a leader, I always parked in the farthest spot from our building. Now, okay, I needed the steps. But I also resented the fact that as a young cub reporter, I had to hike to the back lot on my way to cover a homicide because all the department heads had spots guaranteed for them right next to the building. People do notice. Develop a network, not just of peers in your industry, especially those you've mentored, but friends you've developed in the community. It's important to understand that you're not alone, and there's plenty you can learn. It's also important to know that you're doing a hell of a lot right. Sometimes when it comes to leading change, it's the simple things, as simple as delivering a newspaper. Our window for redelivery had closed one day when the wife of Judge Dennis Montalban, who we lost just a few weeks ago, called to ask for his paper because it hadn't been delivered that morning. Well, it was a beautiful day. Why wouldn't I walk 10 minutes to his riverfront place and deliver the paper? And of course, I got to hear his sense of humor as he told me I finally had found a job that I was worthy of. But then I heard back from his wife, and I knew it meant something to him, and that meant something to me. Look at the things that you do well as a business and as a person. Look at the things that you get done because of your efforts. I look around this room, and as I've stressed community partnership and community service, we continue to serve in a lot of good ways with a lot of wonderful partners in this room. In the next room, May 4th, we will honor 24 students who have overcome obstacles and persevered as La Crosse Tribune Extra Effort Award winners. Each one will get a scholarship of more than $1,500 and some much more than that because of partnerships we've developed. With Chris Hardy, Seven Rivers Alliance, we honor rising stars under 40 who are making a difference. With TJ and Ann, we have put on economic indicators for, goodness, 17 years. We honor nurses, we honor veterans. We still sponsor Jeans Day. Not a bad list for enemy of the American people. I also think it's a great time to spend more time on mentorship. It's a great way to share your experience and encouragement. But please, don't be a fool. As your people win awards and move up in their careers, don't take credit. They did the work, but do take a lot of pride. It's hard not to reminisce about your business and how it used to be. Oh, the fun you had and the resources. But the people you work with, the bright, young, talented people, they really don't want to hear it. They're a lot like the old bit on Saturday Night Live where one of my favorite comedians would be discussing the issues of the day and then all of a sudden would pop up the caption and he would read, "But what does this mean to me, Al Franken?" Well, we all want to know what this means to me, don't we? The people you lead want to know that you're invested in their growth, that mentorship is truly the best revenge, not waxing about the good old days. It's so important to remember that your folks take their cues from your leadership. Whatever you have lost matters less to them than what you want to gain and how you plan to lead. And remember one other thing that Mark and I could attest to. As you're standing at the aptly named vanity every morning, you've got a brush in one hand and a hairdryer in the other, and something next to you called product, whatever the hell that is. I already have a 15-minute head start on you.
Okay. I like your hairstyle, Rusty. It looks great. So from the lens of early childhood educators, we might be desiring to cause a transition in thinking, and that is recognizing the contribution that early childhood education makes to a better society, and then consequently providing the proper compensation to make that happen. We're trying to cause that change. What in your experience, what advice would you have for us in helping cause that change instead of reacting to a change? We're trying to be the change agents in people's thinking so we can better society. What advice might you have for us? Heather?
One of the things that I did very early on in my time here at Gunderson is realizing that post-pandemic, especially for the healthcare profession, we became really, really good at being taskmasters. So we were told by the CDC how to behave and by governmental agencies how to behave, and it's kind of new for us. I mean, talk about highly regulated. I get that, right? In healthcare, we have to follow regulations, but the pandemic changed us. We were told, decisions prior to that, we had some influence on how we were going to do things. We lost all control of that. And what I found over the past 2 years is people closest to the work who understand the work have lost their voice, and they lost their ability to be part of decisions that impact what they do every single day. So one of the things we did very early on, we have got this amazing innovation team at Gunderson Health System, and I partnered with them and said, I need you to provide a safe place for people closest to caring for our patients and their families to tell us what are the pebbles in their shoes, what are the rocks in their shoes, what are the boulders in their shoes, and then come back and let me sort through that and figure out how I can make this better for them. What I found out, when I got here, I kept thinking, oh my gosh, all I'm hearing about is compensation. We're not paid enough to deal with this. We don't get paid enough. And I kept thinking, there's some psychology behind this. Does everybody deserve more compensation? Of course they do after what we've gone through over the last couple of years. However, there's more driving that. There's got to be more driving that. And I kept hearing all of these things, and the more people they went out and talked to, by the end of the day, I think we interviewed a total of 300 and some frontline workers, and the stories that came back were unbelievable and drove us to be able to make a decision to completely rearrange our strategic priorities for Gunderson Health System for the next however many years it's going to take. This is our number one strategic priority, is helping our frontline find their voice, solve the problems that affect their work, and resource it. And we're going to figure out how to make sure that we never get in a place where we've gotten today. So my advice would be, use your voice, and use your voice in every possible channel and venue. Things like this, participate, be active, write to your legislators, do whatever it is you can do to make sure that your stance is heard, and just talk about it. You've got to just keep talking about it, because I do think at the end of the day, I keep saying there are things that make people throw their hands up in the air and say, you just don't pay me enough to do this. This is not worth it. But there's always something behind that. And until we start uncovering that and start peeling back the layers to figure out exactly what those things are, they're solvable, because people do the work that they're passionate about and that you want to do in your heart. And that's how you get people to stay and how you get to build your business and build your organizations.
And I would suggest not only using that voice within your organization, but as you advocate outside your organization. How often do you talk to people outside of your sphere about the challenges you face and what it means to the future of our community? I think that's a really important thing. How often do you write a guest column to the Tribune talking about the great work that you and your people do and why you're facing a challenge and what solutions there may be? I think that's really important. I think it's just as important for a newspaper. We have an institutional voice, and it's called writing an editorial. And I think using that voice to keep pushing for good things in the community is a really important part of what we do. So it's not the time to lose your voice. It's exactly the time to lift it, and lift it not just within your organizations, but to others as well.
So if we were successful as those interested in addressing early childhood education and care and elevating the issue and the real challenge with it, which is, let's put a label on it, compensation of our providers. If we were successful in elevating that issue, it used to be the case that there was the public sector and the private sector, and never the two shall meet unless there's a regulatory issue. You just go about your separate business. Society has changed, as well as the healthcare industry and the news business. Today, society is essentially saying, I see a problem. I don't care if the public sector solves it, the private sector solves it, both of you, neither of you, somebody I never heard of, it just ought to get solved. That being the case, I guess your reaction to that.
First of all, thank you again for having me here today, because my brain is now spinning 100 miles an hour on what we can do to partner together. So, as you know, Gunderson is a very large very large employer in this area, and I need you as bad as you need us. So I think that's it. We've just got to come together. The world has changed. So I think the moment everybody just stops and pauses and realizes the interdependence in a community, people want to be part of that community, and I think we all need to just work together to be successful, to make sure that, you know, ends are being met for everybody. So I think the more we participate in things like this, honestly, I said to Nathan when he came to me to talk on this panel, I said, I don't understand why you're asking, but help me understand. And sitting here for the last however long, I completely understand. I get it. I understand. I see it. So the more we just communicate and talk and share the concerns and the needs, I think the better off we're all going to be.
And I want to go back to a thread that TJ brought up, and that is incarceration. May seem like a silly question. The state of Wisconsin spends more on incarceration than the UW system. Does that bother you? I've written editorials saying that it bothers the hell out of me.
All right, let's go to questions from the audience.
Hi, my name is Nine Dodge, and I am currently a public school teacher in La Crosse. I teach at a Montessori middle school, and I also have two small children. They're 2 and 4. And I am wondering if anyone knows about the Bezos Academy. They are relatively new, and as far as I know, they have so far started schools, or they're partnering as a private company funded by Jeff Bezos, as far as I know, but with other administrators. But they're partnering with public schools and private institutions to build childcare that's equitable and serves in the Montessori model. I don't think they're officially Montessori because their teachers, they can't get enough trained Montessori teachers, but my understanding is that they're helping support early childhood. So far, I think just like Florida and Washington, but I'm wondering if anyone has explored the possibility of bringing a Bezos Academy model to La Crosse.
Anybody have a comment on that? We'll find out, okay? You bet. Who else had a question?
You mentioned recruiting, and this also applies to the previous panel that we had. I've heard a lot of mention today about attracting people to Wisconsin, attracting people to the community, bringing people in, but maybe I'm missing something, but it's not my understanding that we're losing people from the community. We're losing people to other sectors. We're losing childcare professionals. They're not going to Iowa. They're here already. There are people who are ready to go into these professions, but we're not able to provide the conditions that are sustainable for their families in terms of paying them enough, giving them the benefits that they need. And so I get concerned when I hear all this talk about bringing people to the community, like that's going to build the tax base or something like that. It's not about bringing people here. People are here and are needing the jobs that are not right now sustaining their livelihood. So maybe that's not a question, maybe that's a statement, but I just want to make sure I'm clear on that, because that concerned me that we were going in that direction.
Jim, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's in fact not the case, okay, unfortunately. So we don't have enough bodies because you have high retirement rates going on in the community. You've got, I mean, so we won't get into the charts, but the bottom line is you are losing population in terms of workforce, okay? Not in terms of gross numbers, but in terms of population. So you have to, when you talk about workforce, you do have to get into the recruitment side of it. The idea, and again, I think, so this is not about arguing with you, it is about saying, yeah, and I'll give you an opportunity to respond, but I think the point is, clearly we want to get people into the jobs that we're talking about today. Clearly you need to pay them more, clearly you need to do more with benefits. When you do that, that means they'll take that job as opposed to taking some other job. And so from a workforce point of view, you haven't balanced it out. You've balanced it out in terms of getting you the workers you want, perhaps at least for a period of time.
Yeah, what I'm hearing from the child care provider organizations, they're not losing people necessarily to retirement so much as they are to this job doesn't sustain my lifestyle. I mean, Kevin and I were just talking about the fact that there are so many people waiting to go into healthcare professions, but there are not enough clinical placements, which is one of the concerns. There are people waiting to go into the professions. So it just seems like we're putting a lot of emphasis on recruiting people from other states or from other communities, but there are a lot of people here.
We're not arguing. So from a workforce point of view, we have to recruit people from outside the community. In terms of other people here now who could be working in childcare, I think that's probably correct, yes.
And no question about it. Those two perspectives are not mutually exclusive. We are short of workers in this state, no doubt. We are also losing people in the childcare industry to other industries that are paying them more or providing additional benefits that we're not able to provide. Both are true, and both are significant challenges for our state.
Hi, my name's Rita Miller. I'm a child care licensing specialist for La Crosse County. Excuse me. So I monitor all the child care centers in the county, have been for the last 22 years. And I guess I just want to share that every visit, my directors are telling me, number one challenge is staffing. And it's not only the pay, it is also the benefits and the professional recognition. It's all those things. And I've been part of state groups with Chris and Jody, other people in this room for Ruth, the last 3 years or longer, talking about this and, hearing all these perspectives. I do think the time is now. I think our businesses, our politicians recognize we need to do something. I think COVID did do that for us. But I think it is a combination. I think it's going to be a combination of public money, private money, and it's to get, and I think it can be a combination. Maybe the school district idea is fine if those employees get district pay and benefits. But we also have to shore up our existing providers that have been here. And that may be, how do we give tax dollars to privately owned businesses? Because we do it at 4K, but not birth to 4. But it also is all our local businesses putting revenue into the child care system that they need so they can have their employees go to work. And it's to not only get paid, but it's to get health insurance. So I just feel like there should be able to be a way to have a fund, much like United Way or something else, where if you are a regulated child care provider, public dollars, business dollars can go into this fund to help allow our centers to pay their staff a livable wage, to help supplement health insurance, because often these are single women who have no other health insurance. And so for the dollars to go right to the staff, to get them into the field, it's a tough job they do every day. And this is the toughest I've seen it in 22 years. So I think it is going to take a combined approach of public tax dollars, of businesses like Gunderson pledging X amount of dollars a year to this fund and say, I support our local child care as an employer. And that money being used to help, raise those $1 an hour wages, but also to somehow figure out a way, if you're a regulated provider, I don't know the business side of this, but why can't there be a group health insurance policy, for child care providers if you're regulated?
Jim, as you're moving to the next question, let me ask Heather Rusty, in any sort of a major change in an industry or business, there's a core group or basket of things that you do everything you possibly can to make sure you care for because you need it for wherever you're going to go. And generally, it's human capital. You want to do everything you can to maintain that nursing population. You want to do everything you can to keep those reporters because that's the bread and butter. Why do you think it is that that kind of thinking has not transitioned into recognizing that our young people are what get us from where we are now to where we want to be as a society? Why the disconnect with the thinking? What's your opinion?
Yeah, there's a terrible disconnect. What are our most precious assets? And who are we entrusting them with every day? One would think you wouldn't have to make that case. It seems pretty darn simple. So how do you then leverage that? How do you then get that message out? How do you whip up support to have, as you said, a United Way type of a drive that gets community investment into something that is so important?
Yeah, I just keep coming back to the world has changed, right? Things have changed, and I think the time is now in figuring out just that. It's being creative. It's thinking of doing things that we've never done before. I think some of the things that we've rolled out in healthcare over the past 6 months, if you would have told me we would have done that 2 years ago, I would have told you were nuts. There's no way that the healthcare industry would ever accept something like that. But we've done it. We've moved it. Took a pandemic, unfortunately, for most of us to get on board with it. But I think you've got a burning platform, and now is the time to get the right people on your bus and telling your story and combining your resources to make the move, make a revolution. That's what I keep telling everybody. Be part of it.
I have one last question, if I could, for you, and then let Mark close it up. The private sector has resources, and so as you folks have gone through your time of change, the question of how did you gauge progress? How did you think about reorganizing? I listened to both of your stories, and they're exactly what I was hoping we would hear here today. But I wonder if part of what we need to put on the table isn't saying all of these folks who are running small businesses and are dealing with government issues and all the rest of this stuff. I mean, maybe we need to be asking ourselves the question as private sector folks, how do we help them become change managers or whatever? Which is not to say you're not managing change. You're doing an amazing job with no resources. The question is there a way to energize that to make it stronger? Because whether it's 3 to 5 years or Ann's 10 years, this is what we're going to be doing on a variety of different fronts. And so the private sector, I think, really needs to become a part of that. But I'd be interested in your reaction.
Really, that's a really interesting thought, because you're right. As you were talking, I'm sitting here thinking, how am I still standing through that? Well, I'm a certified change agent, right? Like, I've gone through extensive training on how to deal with mastering change. I'm fortunate that I work for healthcare and organizations that can do that, but you're right. I think there is an opportunity. We've got those resources in our community. We've got that. Let's figure out how to do it. I think you're right. Just me sitting here today, you've completely changed my perspective and opened my eyes to some things. So this is the stories, this is where we need to go. I hear that, use the newspaper, let's use it for good things like this. I think this is the power of that. So I think you're right. We've got the resources. There's more places than just Gunderson that have those resources. So partnering together to get you all the tools you need, I think, is very doable.
And COVID has caused so much overwhelming change. We're now comfortable sitting in front of a computer and having a Zoom meeting. You didn't use the word Zoom much 2 years ago, at least not in that context. So we have all gone through tremendous change. Well, we can do this. We've had to do this. We have to continue doing this. So I think that too is an important element. But when it comes to getting private sector and business support, do businesses not understand that productivity goes down if a child is ill and there's no way to get care and someone misses work? Zoom has made that a little easier, but it's still an issue. And again, the value of all that you do every day, as you suggest, it's really inspiring to hear, yes, the challenges, but also how you meet those every day. Don't take that for granted. Share that kind of resilience and keep telling people how important that is to families, our economy, the well-being of our region.
Heather Shimmers, Gunderson Health System, Rusty Cunningham, Mr. La Crosse Tribune. La Crosse region is very fortunate to have you two leaders in this area. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Heather and Rusty.